Hello. Okay, today I want to share with you what got me into this Bigfoot phenomenon, and what got me into this is probably what got a lot of people into this would have been the episode of In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. Now that was in the late 70s if I remember right. And that episode basically really introduced Bigfoot to the world. Now, in that time, 70s and 80s, there wasn't much information out there on Bigfoot, other than what you could see in the scandal magazines, The Inquirer, or a random article here or there, or a book in the newspaper, or a book in the library, perhaps. But when the internet came out, there was all kinds of information out there. And what I did is I picked and poked at that here and there, until I came across Dr. Matthew Johnson and his experience in the Oregon caves. Now that opened up his world to Bigfoot. And he took off with that, going into the forest. He spent years in the forest, initially banging on trees, hooping and hollering like some of them are still doing today, with, of course, limited results, until he was approached personally by the Bigfoot Forest People. Now, he's written 2 books on that experience, those experiences, and the experiences that he continues to have. So I strongly suggest that you look at those and pick those up. I'll put those up. But as Dr. Johnson got into this, he shared his experiences in his books and on YouTube. And many Bigfooters didn't accept his experiences very well. But let me cut to the chase. Today, those experiences that Dr. Johnson was sharing, people are now acknowledging and having those experiences themselves. And what I mean by that is the claims of Bigfoot being able to cloak, become invisible. Let me back up a little bit. And what I mean by that is, if you've seen the movie The Predator, when the creature is out of phase or cloaked and blends in with his environment, that's what I mean. That's what these Bigfoot Forest People are able to do. And over the years, growing up, when I would see something on the Bigfoot Forest People, a lot of times they were interviewing Native Americans and elders, and they would share the same stories as far as the abilities of the Bigfoot. And they would explain that it could be very close to you or right next to you and you wouldn't even see it. And of course, that just sounds like old folklore, but when you put that together with what people are experiencing today, it's like, well, of course, it was true all along. But some of those experiences are just phenomenal. And like I said, other people are having them today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin sharing with you my experiences that really got me into this. And Dr. Johnson began inviting anybody who wanted to come, anybody who had read his books and has kind of kept up with what he's been sharing, to come to his property and see for yourself. And I took him up on that. I invited 2 of my grandsons up to come up with me, because they were kind of into the Bigfoot thing too. We had been watching Finding Bigfoot, those kind of shows, and they were interested. And we took them up on this opportunity, and we flew to Washington. And needless to say, we had very, very incredible experiences. First, of course, arriving, meeting Matt and his wife Cynthia, and other folks who'd come up to share the experiences. We were given an opportunity to hike the property, check it out, and while we were out there, pick somewhere where we chose to sleep, because everybody slept outside. Because this is the best way to experience this. So we picked our area out there in the forest, and it was pretty dark even in the daytime. The forest was so thick. We picked our area, and ready to see what the night brought. Well, we began with getting together at the house and Matt kind of sharing, Dr. Johnson kind of sharing others' experiences on the property and what he's experienced so that we might be aware of what we might see. But just because somebody experienced it doesn't mean that the other's going to experience it. It's just hard telling what you can experience. But we all met in this area in the middle of the forest called Serenity Meadow. We all brought our lawn chairs, no lights, dark, very dark. But there were glow rocks all through the paths in the forest around this property, so you could kind of see where you're going. But we all sat in the meadow at night and gathered in front of what was called a wood pile. Well, it was a wood pile. And we were invited to walk down individually or two at a time perhaps, and invite the forest people to interact with you while you're there. So my first trip down there was myself and one of my grandsons. We stood there and communicated, talked to them, invited them to approach us if they wanted to, held out our hands. And while we were doing that, we saw these little lights kind of dance across our hands, both of our hands. And of course we look at each other and in shock, I guess, like what are we experiencing here? And also you see part of your hand just go black, as if your hand was being touched or covered by something. But it was incredible, just the same. And while we were doing that, we'd also hear footsteps walking around us. We'd hear the crunch in the leaves walking around us. And anytime either one of us had an experience, it seemed like we both experienced the same thing at the same time. Me and my grandson, we would look at each other in amazement, like, did you hear that? Did you see that? Did you feel that? But it was quite remarkable. So we went back up, left the wood pile, went back up to our lawn chairs and just sat. That was the first night. On the second night, we all met at the Serenity Meadow again. And the most incredible thing was while we were in the sitting area, myself and one of my grandsons decided we needed to go back to the house for something. Others were sitting around in the dark, and we went back to the house. And as we're coming around the path to get back to the meadow from the house, as we're approaching the meadow, we're still in the forest, and as we're coming out of the forest, or just barely into the meadow, we can see these lights above where, I would say, a little bit past where the woodpile was, and the trees just flashing and flickering. And, you know, we were just like, what is that? Well, it was just pretty amazing. We didn't really know what it was or had any idea what it was. But as we got back to the chairs in the meadow, Dr. Johnson got up in front of the crowd and told us Zorth is approaching. Now Zorth is the leader, the president of the Janu, who came there to visit us. Okay, we're still trying to absorb all this, and it was pretty far out there. But I'll tell you what, we were told that he came out of his portal down by the woodpile, behind the woodpile, along one of the paths in the forest, and he's coming up the path now. So later, I kind of realized, and myself and my grandson kind of put it together, that apparently when we were seeing those lights in the trees was perhaps when that portal was opening, which it's just another incredible experience. And as Zorth approached up the path, you could see a dark figure in the darkness. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's incredible, just incredible. And a little bit after that now, as things are starting to settle down, I got up and decided to go over what is called the
Hello, my friends.
3 o'clock trail. Yeah,
Can
the
you
3
come out
o'clock
for me?
trail. By myself. I just got up and went over there, and because actually our cots were down that 3 o'clock trail, up and around the curve and back down the forest. So I went over to the 3 o'clock trail and just kind of got down, you know, on the ground. And as I'm looking around, these little blue light orbs come into view and start coming to me, towards me. And they come within 4 or 5 feet from me and stop, and there are dozens of these orbs, dozens. They're not bugs or anything. They are each individually floating and hovering and just hanging out there. So again, I stick my hand out and invite them to approach me if they want. And the same thing happens to my hand, but this time I can really see them coming to my hand. And I'm just in amazement at what I'm seeing. Totally blown away, totally blown away. So I just sit there for probably 4 or 5 minutes, just looking at them, talking to them in my mind and verbally. Unfortunately, I don't get anything back from them. I don't hear anything from them. But I decided to go back and get my grandsons and a few other people. And I kind of slowly get up, go back to the meadow, and say, come over here, you guys, check this out. And I get them to approach slowly and quietly because I didn't want to freak them out because they were still there. They were still floating around out there. And we all got down and asked them to approach, touch our hands, and they did. They hung out another 4 or 5 minutes before they slowly dissipated as they moved away. Now, when we went to go to our cots later that night, after the night sit in the meadow, it would have been myself and my 2 grandsons. We went to sleep, go to our cots, and some other weird things happened. While we were in the night sit area, and go back, we heard a pack of coyotes down the hill there in what's called the wetlands going off. And there's nothing to worry about. It's just everybody noticed it. So now going back to, we were going to bed, getting to our cots, and I think we all fell asleep relatively quick. We had a long day. And I woke up in the middle of the night hearing these coyotes. But the thing is, it sounded like they were right there by us. It was that loud. And I remember waking up and I nudged my grandson and I said, wow, they're really, really close. And that's all I remember. I guess I went right back to sleep. But before I did, I heard 3 footsteps right next to me. 3 footfalls right next to me. And then I was out for the night. So yeah, just some weird stuff that happened those first couple nights. And while at Camp Janu there, we would all gather in the morning after breakfast, and everybody would share their experiences, if any. Some had really, really cool experiences. There were some who didn't have anything happen though. But like I say, it just varies. But we would share each other's experiences, and Matt would share, Dr. Johnson would share more with us. And it turned out to be a really, really, really great weekend. Grandkids were glad they came, opened up their world to something new, and it really validated what Matt was sharing with us on the Bigfoot Forest People. Just by having those experiences. But there's so many more experiences to come. See you next time.